And good evening, my lovely Lost Tales, and welcome back to the Blue Rose Respite for my fantastical Friday stream. How are you all doing, my lovelies? I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all staying cool wherever you are in the world. It is still so hot here in the UK. I thought we were finally catching a break, but apparently not. I did manage to get my webcam up and running again. I tested it not last night, but the night before, and I installed an update that was outstanding, so hopefully that means things are fine. So knock on wood, things should be fine with my webcam moving forward. But how's it going, my lovelies? I hope you're all doing well. What have you guys got planned for the weekend? I hope you've got some nice fun things planned, because you deserve it. 100% you deserve it. But first and foremost, thank you so much, Samuel, for your 60-month resub. On this world of 8 billion people, I stumbled upon a lost goddess narrating Edgar Allan Poe and making vampire ASMRs on YouTube, and you changed the course of my life for better waters. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much, Sam. You've been such a cornerstone of my incredible community, and I'm so thankful to have you be a part of it. Thank you so much. You always go above and beyond with just such kind words and supportive attitude. Like, thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate it. You're incredible. Just woke up from sleeping. It's because I went to bed at 9:30 a.m. What were you doing? Honey, no. You need to get a good night's sleep. I say that hypocritically, but you need to get a good night's sleep. God damn it. Germany fooled me so much. It rained a little, was cold, and now I'm dying again. I know the feeling, Max. I'm so sorry. I'm wonderful, Stephanie. Just sitting in my favorite cafe with a latte and a brownie and a hard copy cover of Dracula. Today is a good day. Honestly, Lord Azul, all of that sounds absolutely incredible. That is like peak, like casual spooky energy, and I'm all here for it. So hell fucking yes. Enjoy your latte. Enjoy that brownie. That sounds amazing. Things have been pretty good for me. Luckily, the weather's cooled down where I am today, and so it's not dreadfully hot, and I'm getting to help teach a friend of mine learn an animation program that I've been using this weekend. Hell yes! That sounds awesome! Instead of getting a good night's sleep, unheard of. I'm getting better, okay? Like, I've definitely scaled back in terms of getting up at, like, the crack of dawn, like I used to when I was working full-time in finance, and then on top of that, going to the gym, like, I think it was up to like 6 days a week at one point, and it was just absolutely exhausting. But now I have, excuse me, I have a much healthier balance where I am actually getting some more sleep for the most part and trying to take care of myself a little bit better. But it's okay, I got some good days at home this week, so cold room and trying to catch up on all your stories on YouTube. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Max. I really appreciate that. I'm doing great. I'll be playing the new Donkey Kong game all weekend. It's amazing so far. That sounds so cool. I think you posted a picture of it on the Discord, and that looks incredible. I hope you have an awesome weekend. That sounds great. Also managed to finish writing my first Victoria Newman fic. That's awesome. All here for fanfiction. Fuck yes for fanfiction. Okay, so we only probably have a little bit left of Cage of Roses. We might even have less than an hour of gameplay left, but if that's the case, then I'll try and fill the time for a little bit longer by talking about my thoughts on the game, and we'll have a chat about vampires in general. We'll shift things around to maybe doing a Let's Talking stream or something. And Jay, thank you so much. Hi Stephanie, congrats on your draft. I'm so excited to follow the progress of this book. It's inspiring me to continue my campaign setting. Hell yes. Honestly, it's been fantastic to see so many people be so receptive to the news that I've finished the first draft of my debut novel. I'm incredibly proud of it, and I can't wait for it to slowly come together over the next few months in terms of subsequent drafts. There's still a lot of work I have to do to get it to a good state where I feel confident in sending it out on submission to literary agencies. But honestly, I have a lot of confidence in my manuscript. I think the premise is interesting. I think my characters are engaging. I was just thinking, like, should I talk about this now, or should I save this for a different time? No, actually, because I don't mean to, like, toot my own horn about my writing. But when I did my master's degree 10 years ago, God, that's a scary thought. But yeah, it was about like 9-10 years ago or something like that. One of the bits of feedback that I got back from my peers who are also taking the class, and also sometimes the teachers as well, is that my writing felt like it was a completed book, even in like early draft stages. And that was my writing 10 years ago. So I'm trying to keep that in mind of like, okay, I've had 10 years to keep working on my craft in terms of storytelling and character and come up with some cool original ideas for stories. And hopefully my eventual draft, like my submission draft, let's say, is going to be good enough that it ensnares people's attention and I get a wonderful literary agent. There's a couple of that I already have my eye on that I would love to work with. But here's knock on wood that things go well with my book, because I'm very, very proud of it so far. What do we did for the Bendy finale? That sounds good. That sounds good. Oh my god, Logan! Hi, darling! How are you doing, sweetheart? It's so good to see you. Hi, lovely. We'll be lurking today, but thank you for streaming as I'm about to hit the road for the weekend. Hell yes! Safe driving, safe travels and all that, Logan. I love you. You're a precious bean. I love your face. And have a safe weekend and all that good stuff. It's put a fire in my belly to get my fanfic written. It's really encouraging to see your vlogs on it. I really appreciate that. Thank you. There's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about yet, because I don't want to spoil things like what my female main character and my male main character are like just yet, but I have commissioned some art of them. It's not done yet, but hopefully before the end of the year, you guys will get to see a little bit of what they look like. And I'll definitely be like showing things in terms of like aesthetic posts and stuff like that, so you get an idea of the vibes and what their dynamic is and what they're like as individuals, because I love my babies so much. I'm so full of feels with them. Your writing's always been fantastic. I always want any more of your series. Oh, thank you so much, Jay. You're so sweet. Thank you. Because you're the Seraph of Stories, damn it. That title ain't just for show. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. Sammy Scaracomi, no matter what you write, I will read it. I really appreciate that, Scaracomi. Thank you so much. I will say I'm trying to put together like a rough paragraph or two of the content warnings for my manuscript. Because with the paranormal romance, and especially because it's an adult novel and it has the subgenres of horror and dark fantasy as well, there's a lot of taboo subject matter that's kind of explored, or like definitely darker themes that are in my book. So in due course, I'll update my website with a little bit of a synopsis about what my story is, as well as art of my characters, maybe even a link to a playlist of the vibes and songs that feel like the story that I'm going to tell, as well as a content warning, description of just kind of generally what to expect, without giving spoilers away or anything like that. So excited to see it. Thank you so much, Moon. Thank you. I don't read books so much, but I'm really excited to read your book. The quality of your writing is incredible. The premise sounds great. I'll definitely be buying a copy when it's available. Thank you so much, King Deadlock. I really appreciate it. And for people who have asked, because I got this comment a number of times when I did my announcement video, and I've got it subsequently on my social media. A lot of people have asked, like, when it eventually gets picked up and published, will I do the audiobook? Honestly, because the book is set in America, while I could do a fairly good American accent, more than likely I would want to hire or work with a different audiobook narrator to do the audiobook for my manuscript, for my eventual novel, because there's a part of me that also wants to make a bit more of a separation between myself as the author and the characters that I've created, because I've loved bringing my voice to life through the characters that I've made for my ASMR tales, but I'm feeling like when it comes to my book and future books, I want to have a healthier separation between myself and my characters, if that makes sense. While I'm imagining a lot of people will be very excited for me to do the audiobook for any future novel I write. Maybe if I eventually write a novel that is set in Australia and I feel like the character has a voice that fits mine, then maybe. But I think for me, I would want to keep a healthier distance, separation between myself and my characters, and my, like, the characters in the world that I create in my book, if that makes sense. Doing well. I'm about to fly home for visiting family. Thrilled to be back with you all. Also, want on record that when you get closer to publishing, if you need ARC readers, I volunteer. Storykeeper, that's so sweet of you. Thank you so much for the offer. I appreciate it. Safe travels back to your family. Hey, Jay. How's it going? I beat Javel. I was playing Deltarune while listening. A soothing voice saw me through. Hell yes, good on you. Been stuck for hours. Oh, I know the feeling. I've played Hollow Knight a couple of times, and there's some bosses that just... I haven't completed the game because I just started crying after a while and I couldn't beat it. Okay, so are you guys ready for Cage of Roses? Speaking of audiobooks, because I'm going to be narrating the rest of this story, are we ready for some more Cage of Roses? Because I most certainly am. We definitely probably only have like a little bit more of the story to go, but I'm taking this as good practice because I've got another audio... Is it an audiobook gig next week? One second. Yes, next week. Yes, I'm doing another audiobook recording next week, so I'm taking this as fun practice for when I have to go into Oxford to do that. Okay. Let us continue. So, where last we left off, the teeny tiny Claudia vampire bit the priest because he was essentially dying from the overexertion of his powers to save Meike, and I feel bad I can't remember some people's names. And so we're yet to see what happens with that, but Meike is alive, and she is safely draped in the arms of her beloved Magdalena and her lovely maid Hetty. So we'll see what happens next. We are like right on the cusp of finishing this story, so let's go. Meike lay unconscious for 2 days, tucked up in her bed, while Henny and Magdalena tended to her. Drained from her brush with death, she drifted, unaware of how tightly Magdalena held her hand throughout her convalescing. Meike knew not, as she slumbered, that Magdalena sat beside her, praying to a god she did not believe in for her safety. But when she finally awoke, shaking off her exhaustion as a duck ruffles its feathers free from water, she soon learned of the anxiety her slumber had caused. It was early in the morning when Meike opened her eyes. It was cloudy and overcast, and only weak rays of sunlight could spill through the moth-eaten holes in the fabric, all pale and washed out thanks to the bower of clouds which hung in the sky. Henny sat in a chair by Meike's side, and when she saw Meike's eyelashes flutter, she cried, "Oh, Meike! My Meike! I'm so relieved!" Henny. Meike looked at Henny askance. Her head was pounding fit to burst, and her thoughts, which were far too numerous, seemed to weigh heavily upon her, like rocks. Weak though the sunlight was, it stung her eyes, and she winced. The pain which had pierced her following Haida Marie's attack had vanished, and now she ached all over. Her arms and her legs felt horribly leaden. These aches, at least, reassured Meike that Henny's anxious face was not a fabrication of her addled imagination. This could not be a dream, for she felt too uncomfortable. It took a considerable amount of effort for Meike to sit up in bed. She winced as she did so, and Henny had to lean in to aid her. So, I have a night dress that's kind of similar to the one Meike's wearing, except it's kind of puffier sleeves, and you can have it off the shoulders or on the shoulders. I want her night dress. I want a long, flowy, like, something looking like it's out of Crimson Peak night dress, like... It's not quite a slip, but it's not quite a night dress at the same time. It has like the nice waistband underneath the bust, kind of a Regency style silhouette, I'm assuming. But it just looks so comfortable. It's so pretty. Careful, Meike. Don't push yourself now. You really have been through the wars. Oh yes, how could I forget? Meike smiled warily. I apologize. I'll try to be more careful. Yes, you do that. I'd hate for your wounds to reopen. No, come to think of it, I'm not entirely sure if that's possible. Johan did quite the thorough job. There aren't any scars. I can't even see any bruises. You don't look like you were injured at all. It really must have been a miracle. A miracle, I suppose it must have been. He is a priest, after all. Meike looked down at herself. She was wearing the same nightgown Magdalena had bequeathed to her, but the tear which had rent the middle of it had been sewn up. The stitches were neat, the thread white, so it was hard to tell from a distance any damage had been done to it at all. Meike recognized this neat needlework. Henny must have fixed this gown for her as she slept. Her maid really was dutiful down to the smallest of details. Meike placed one hand to her chest, trembling as she did so. I just realized the 5-year badge I have now is all gold. Yeah, it is! Hell yes. She still remembered what had happened, exhausted though she was. You were dead, girl. She had come between Heidemarie and Magdalena, and she'd been skewered for her best efforts, her blood spattering all across the carpet hall like spilled wine. The pain was not something she would forget in a hurry. Wincing, Meike looked away, and in so doing saw Magdalena. Magdalena was sitting beside Henny, her pale eyelashes closed, her lips pursed in silent slumber. Her hands rested upon her lap and her head hung forwards, like that of a doll's. She was quite motionless, despite the weak sunlight which played about her pale skin, her even paler hair. Oh, Lena. Meike sighed, then turned to Henny, desperately seeking reassurance. Is she alright, Henny? Is she alright, Henny? She isn't ill, is she? Huh? Henny glanced at Magdalena, as though seeing her for the first time, then frowned. If she's ill, it's not with nothing more than worry. You needn't fuss so. She's fine. At least, as far as an undead being can be fine. She's just sleeping, and I don't blame her for it. Ah, itchy. She's been sitting at your side ever since we brought you up here. She's not had a single wink of sleep all this time, not until she dropped off a few hours earlier. Really? Meike's face flushed, tugged at Magdalena's thoughtfulness. She cares for me that much? Ever so much. Her actions made it blindingly obvious. I'll admit, I didn't much think of her at first. Can you blame me? After all she put you through? But my opinions of hers really turned around. I didn't think vampires could be so caring, but it's plain as day she adores you. She was beside herself when you collapsed, she was. She looked like, oh, I don't know, like a woman who'd lost all will to live. She fell onto the ground and then... Well... Henny shook her head, then smiled. Why are you asking about Magdalena, Meike? After all you've been through, shouldn't you be more concerned about yourself? Maybe I should, but I worry regardless. I know I have you to care for me, Hen, and you do a wonderful job at it, believe me. But Lena, she hasn't had anyone to care for her in a long, long time. She's been all on her own. That's why I have to worry about her. Nobody else will. My, you must like her an awful lot. Though I suppose you would have leapt to her defense if you didn't. You were just like a knight back then, Meike. You were just missing the sword and the shining armor. And the dignity. Meike smiled thinly. I caused quite a scene back then, as my mother might say, but I was so afraid I wasn't sure what else I was supposed to do. I could only think about helping Lena, but now I feel my rashness has hurt her. She's been in a bad way, I won't deny it, but the blame for that can't be laying wholly at your feet. I think she's been upset about the young mistress of hers too, and her death. It was all very sudden. She hasn't had nearly enough time to get to grips with it. Why, it's almost enough to make me feel sorry for her, and all this, after she kidnapped you. I think she's quite the sorry creature herself. Her mistress? Meike's brow furrowed. She could remember her own agony clearly, but the events which had led up to her chest being cleaved were less lucid. Her thoughts were all disordered, like an unfinished jigsaw puzzle, and trying to slot every piece into its rightful place seemed almost like an impossibility. She thought she could recall, however, a faint memory which had imprinted itself upon her mind. She could remember the stench of blood. Henny had come to her bedroom when she had been in her nightgown and bade her to escape. Taking her hand, Henny had led through the hallway, Meike's bare feet pounding against the floor. Together the two women had passed a large bedroom, its door ajar, and upon the bed Meike had seen. Meike winced, then pressed a hand to her mouth. Yes, she could still remember that. Meike let her eyes fall upon Magdalena once more, who continued to sleep. As Magdalena had no need for air, she slept quite soundlessly. Her chest did not rise, and neither did her eyelids tremble. In sleep, she really did look like a doll, one which was devoid of life. Her mistress wasn't that young girl we saw, was she? That's right. Magdalena talked to me a bit about her circumstances while we were both tending to you. But if you want to know more about her, you best served asking her. I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to explain everything properly. It's awful complicated. Oh, but look here, now. Henny glanced at Magdalena, then drew back. She's beginning to stir. All our talk must have disturbed her. What? True to Henny's words, Magdalena was finally starting to shift. Her pale eyelashes fluttered, still drowsy from sleep. Her once still chest, meanwhile, rose and fell in a parody of breathing. It was unnecessary, of course, being undead. Magdalena had no need to breathe, but it must have been an instinctive action, something which only ceased when Magdalena's consciousness did. I think I'll make myself scarce for now, Meike. I'm sure you've a lot you'd like to talk about with Magdalena. I'm sure she has a lot she'd like to talk about with you. She wouldn't stop talking about you, you know, while you were unconscious. I'm starting to worry she's even more devoted than I am. Wow, it's almost like she's in love with you. Henny withdrew, laughing softly as she did, but before she left the room she paused to say, I'll be back to check on you later. I'm just glad for the present to know you're alright. I really was worried about you, Meike. The door closed behind Henny with a thud, leaving both Meike and Magdalena alone together. Magdalena was sitting up now, her red eyes wide, and with a sigh of relief she exclaimed, Meike! Oh, Meike, you're awake. Are you alright? Kiss. Oh. Meike began, a response half formed upon her lips, but she hadn't the time to fully formulate it before Magdalena flew to her. Meike felt flattered at Magdalena's affections, and she wanted to relax into a hug, but... Ow! Meike tensed. Pain began to ripple through her every nerve ending on fire. Feeling Meike shudder and hearing her gasp with pain, Magdalena drew swiftly back, abashed. If Magdalena had possessed the ability to blush, her face would surely have turned pink. The meme I put of Stephanie's little sapphic lovebirds from Happy Death Day, you are gay! That's one of my favourite scenes. Happy Death Day is such an underrated movie. Oh, I'm sorry, Meike. I apologize. I was just so relieved. I've been watching you ever since you collapsed for the past 2 days or so. I barely slept at all. Oh, take care, Storykeeper. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you have. Henny told me. Excuse me. Oh, did she? She did she? Magdalena pouted. I ought to have expected that she would take the wind from my sails. That maid of yours is such a busybody. She was lecturing me, you know, to take better care of myself, as though I'm not a near immortal creature who has been alive for over a century. She's talked to me like I was a hopeless young girl, or maybe a weak human like me. Yes, that's right, though I don't think you're weak at all, Meike. It was very brave of you to come between me and Hayden Marie like that. That was also very, very foolish. Well, I can see that now. It didn't occur to me at the time, though. I agree, Magdalena's pouting is just so cute. There's something about powerful vampires who are also, like, BB. Like, how dare you? I'm a creature of the night. How dare you not find me intimidating? Damn it. What did occur to you then, pray tell? Only that I wanted to protect you. Protect me? Magdalena smiled, bemused, and shook her head. The sentiment is sweet, but you need protecting far more than I do. Now more so than ever before. I'm starting to think it's no wonder that maid of yours is such a fusspot, having a mistress like you to deal with. Looking after you would turn anybody into an anxious wreck. I do wish she hadn't lectured me so, though. But I suppose she meant well by it. Henny always does. She's such a sweetheart. She's always watched out for me ever since we were children. I could tell when I watched her tend to you, her concern was palpable. It made me a little jealous, I must admit, to see another fuss over you so, and to know that she was the one alert when you finally did awake. I wished to be the first person to see you when you regained consciousness, but my foolish body betrayed me. I might be undead, but even I need my beauty rest. Yes, you do. You haven't been getting nearly enough of it. The bags under your eyes are frightfully dark. Oh, Meike? Magdalena smiled bashfully. Do you mean to admonish me so? I've been getting earfuls of it from that maid of yours already. You can rest assured, I've seen the error of my ways. My caring for you might, I admit, have been too effusive. But how can I not worry when you mean so much to me? I was terrific for your sake. You humans are much too delicate for your own good. Magdalena brushed her fingertips against Meike's cheek, tracing the contours of her face. Kiss. Kiss, please. You must really be more careful in the future. If you were to sicken or to get hurt, it would destroy me, especially with that Henrique fussing over you so much. I started to feel distinctly like a third wheel. Lena. Meike smiled, touched by Magdalena's concern, and let her fingers rest upon Magdalena's. Don't tell me you're too horribly jealous of Henny. She's only my friend. I know that, yet it hurts nonetheless to know she loves you so. Not that I can blame her. Who wouldn't love you, really, when you're so eminently lovable? I think you're exaggerating. Hardly. There is a lot to commend you for, though your intelligence might not be on the top of that list. Here Magdalena smiled, as did Meike. The two women shared laughter, soft and pattering like falling rain, Meike subdued by the ache in her chest, which had yet to fully shift. Once their laughter had passed, and Meike had reassured Magdalena that yes, she was all right, and no, her unexpected embrace didn't hurt. Not that much, at least. Meike then dared to ask the question which had been playing upon her mind since she had awoken. I was just wondering, when Henny tried to run away with me last night, or maybe it was the night before, I don't remember, my head is all in a jumble. We passed an open bedroom, and inside, well, I saw a girl shackled to a bed, lying in the shadows. I didn't get a good look at her, but she seemed very young, and she had been very dead. I don't want to pry, and this might be a peculiar question, but was that small girl your mistress? Silence descended between the pair following this question. Meike glanced at Magdalena from beneath her eyelashes, and Magdalena glanced back, her face deathly pale. For a while Magdalena was quiet, her lips pursed. Then, after heaving a small sigh, she spoke. Ah, yes, so it comes back to this. That girl. I thought you might ask about her, and for good reason. She was indeed my mistress, but she really was a poor thing. My mistress's name, that poor creature. She was called Crystal, though perhaps she had no need of that title after she was turned. Names are a courtesy only humans are granted, whilst she... well, she might have looked like a person, but any humanity she might once have had was stolen from her a long time ago. She couldn't talk. I'm unsure whether she could even think, beyond thirsting for blood. She was less a girl than a force of nature. She was always hungry. She was angry alongside it. It wasn't always that way, though. Crystal used to be a sweet young girl, though I can scarcely believe it myself. She changed so much, but it wasn't her fault. She didn't ask for any of this to happen, and neither did I. It was all very unfortunate. What happened? Meike posted this question quietly, her pale eyes upturned. Would you mind telling me how you and Crystal came to be vampires, and how you came to serve her for so many years? It's fine if you wish to keep it to yourself, but there's so much about you I don't know. I want to get to know you better, Lena. I know I won't be able to undo the past, but talking about it might help, unless you think I'm being presumptuous and asking too much of you. No, it's fine. I don't think you're overstepping your boundaries. How could you, after all we've done together? You know so much about me already. Spilling a few more of my secrets could hardly hurt at this point. But I'm not entirely sure where to begin. At the start, maybe? With my birth to a poor yet happy family in Indigen of little note or consequence? Oh, that is to go very far back indeed, more than a century ago. I would only get sentimental if I started to talk of my mother and father. Not that I could cry over them even if I wanted to, so I think I'll spare you all that. I think I'll begin, instead, at... let's see. Maybe it would be best to commence my tale when I first met Crystal. Magdalena shifted in an attempt to make herself a touch more comfortable before beginning her tale in earnest. I was only 15 years old at the time, and naive for my age. Perhaps I was too young to work, but my parents needed the money, and girls younger than I often went into service. It's not so very different now, or so I've gathered, after speaking to Henrique. Does that mean you were a maid? Indeed, I was. I was a maid, and I worked in this mansion years and years prior, for Crystal's family, the Von Schlichtens. Apologies if I mispronounced that. That was before this house had fallen into wreck and ruin, before the hallways were thick with dust, before the air reeked of death. I was young and fresh-faced, and Crystal... She was not yet 3 years old when I began to work here, and during my employment I watched her grow. She wasn't particularly pretty, bless her. She was horribly shy. She used to shrink away from the other maids, but she had a soft spot for me. She would sit with me while I was cleaning sometimes, though her parents had warned her against it, and I would try to cheer her up. She was neglected by her parents. When they spoke to her, it was only to chastise her, and she didn't have any friends her own age to play with, nor any siblings. I think she was lonely. That must have been why she sought out my company. I was one of the younger maids who worked with the Von Schlichtens, and I tried to pay her special attention. She rarely smiled around anybody else, but my silly stories and jokes were able to make her laugh. She wasn't pretty, like I said, but when she smiled... Magdalena sighed, then shook her head. I so badly wanted to protect her smile. I had 2 younger sisters of my own, and Crystal reminded me of them. I suppose I've always been protective, and I took it upon myself to look out for her. Eventually, even her aloof parents took notice of their daughter's attachment to me, and they decided to make me Crystal's nursemaid. Crystal hadn't gotten along very well with her previous nursemaids. She'd been sullen and sulky with them, and sometimes she even bit them. Perhaps that was important for what was to later come. But I can't blame Crystal for lashing out. She was constantly being pushed around, at the whims of others. As a lady yourself, I imagine you know how she must have felt, rashing around in this empty house on her lonesome. Yes, I can imagine it. My childhood was much the same, though I never bit anybody. I used to climb the trees in the garden, though, and pick the blackberries in the summer, and once I sneaked into my family's mausoleum. My mother was furious with me. I knew she would be, but I did it all the same. I think I was tired of listening to her all the time. It was stifling. I suspect it was the same for Crystal. This house. Magdalena gestured about Mike's bedroom, and its high ceiling, and the wide window with the drawn curtains, through which the grey garden could be seen. Might be large, but it's lacking in warmth. It was cold even then, when it was full of people. It was nothing more than a cage. Crystal couldn't stand it. In fact, I rather think she despised it. She was at her happiest when the two of us were walking through the garden hand in hand, and she could be free of the servants, and her parents, and all their guests. Crystal and I became so close, I would even accompany her when her parents attended luncheons or soirees further afield, in Augsburg and beyond. The von Schlieffens were well known, and they were much in demand. If they didn't have half of Bavaria staying here. I was going to say Barovia. If they didn't have half of Bavaria staying here, they would be paying visits to the nobility all across the county. These near-constant festivities occurred for 3 years. Still an unfortunate event, put paid to them quite quickly. Magdalena paused, now, one hand resting against the base of her throat. Her expression was pensive, her brow furrowed, and it took her a few moments before she gathered the thread of her tale once more. It was on a dark, stormy night. Don't these stories often begin like that? When it happened? The von Schlieffens were returning home after visiting a noble family in Rendsburg, I think. It's been so very long, I don't remember. The von Schlieffens didn't often take Crystal with them when they went on their excursions, but I believe they had stayed with these people for over a week of festivities. Perhaps there was a special occasion. Maybe a wedding? I had been ordered to come with them, to keep an eye on Crystal, who was too young for dancing and drinking. I remember the carriage was wending its way through the forest. It was a cold, foggy night, and the moon was full in the sky. It was round, just as it was a few nights prior, like a giant eye. Crystal had fallen asleep, and was laying her head upon my lap. I was trying to stay awake myself, but I was also beginning to doze. It was well past midnight, and I was tired, and we had been travelling for hours and hours. A handful of other servants had come with us to attend to the von Schlieffens, but they were in a different carriage. We were almost at our host's home, at least I think we were, when it happened. Magdalena's expression darkened, her fingers clenching into fists upon her lap. We were attacked while we were in the forest, not by bandits as you were, but by a thing much more sinister. It all happened so quickly, I wasn't entirely sure what had happened. It was only later, with the gift of hindsight, I could say what must have occurred. He was a vampire. They must have been desperate, attacking a carriage full of people with impunity. 2 carriages, in fact. But I suppose they knew humans would be no match for them, no matter how many there were. Perhaps they were not desperate then, but lashed out solely because they could, because it amused them to do so. I have no idea. I cannot say. It happened so quickly, I never saw the face of the creature who attacked us, not for more than a few moments. I don't even know whether they were a man or a woman. All I know is, at one point, the carriage was wending its way through the woods, unmolested, and the next... Magdalena's voice trailed off while her fingernails sank into her thighs. She inhaled, perhaps gathering her nerve and her scattered thoughts, before saying, I knew something was wrong when I woke up. I hadn't thought that I would ever wake again. I was in so much pain. The darkness had seemed absolute when I fainted, but I soon realized this was not the case. I was lying upon the forest floors, among the strewn scattered leaves like a discarded doll. My head hurt, and so did my limbs. There was an awful taste in my mouth, and I think I vomited. I don't remember. I do remember feeling that something was wrong, though, that I wasn't myself. I pressed a finger to my neck and found 2 marks there which perforated my skin. That shook me, but even then what happened didn't fully register until I pressed my fingers to the inside of my wrist. I thought I was being silly, fantasizing maybe. I'd always been one to get swept up in my own daydreams, until I realized I didn't have a pulse. My skin was cold to the touch and hard. It felt like marble. That was when I realized that, though I'd opened my eyes and I appeared to live on, I was not the same Magdalena I had been, and I wasn't really alive either. I was dead. I didn't need to breathe and my heart didn't beat, but I could still think and sit up and walk. It was quite the shock, but I came to terms with it more quickly than you might think. I had to come to terms with it, lying in the middle of the forest as I was. I had no other choice. I don't know how I knew, but I was grimly aware that, should the sun rise while I was still outdoors, I would turn to ashes. I looked around, and soon found the carriage I had been travelling in. It had been tipped to one side, and Lord and Lady von Schlieffen were still inside it, their bodies mangled. They were dead, at least. Properly dead, unlike me. I didn't need to check their pulses to tell. The other servants they had travelled with had been similarly dispatched. Some were in one piece, but others had been butchered, I suppose is the only word for it. Bits of them were strewn everywhere. Why I had been bitten so cleanly, I know not. If my assailant had torn me apart like they had the others, I doubt I would have been able to sit back up again. But never mind that. No good will come of trying to guess the motives of my attacker. I don't know who attacked us, or why they spared me, in a sense. It was probably a whim. I wasn't the only one who survived this assault either, though I wish I was. I found her lying upon the forest floor, unconscious, her arms and legs bent at broken angles. I thought she was dead, but when I reached out to feel her pulses, she shifted, and that was when I knew. Crystal had died, but she was still alive. She had been turned, and she was only 6 years old. Magdalena winced at this and reached for her chest. There her fingers twisted, as though seeking to wrench out her own heart, which no longer beat. I was able to retain much of my rationality after I was turned into a vampire, but my young mistress was less fortunate. That sweet, shy, stubborn girl I knew had vanished when she woke up. She had lost all her sense of right or wrong, and knew nothing save her own insatiable lust for blood. Her desire was so intense, I think it overwhelmed all her other senses. She could no longer talk upon waking, could no longer smile. She was out of control. Excuse me. I did not realize that, however, until I took her back to her home. We made it back before the first rays of sun rose, with me carrying Crystal on my back. She had been half asleep as I carried her, and had been docile enough, but she changed when she returned to her old abode. There were still servants who resided there, to upkeep the palace in the von Schlieffen's brief absence, and Crystal, Magdalena grit her teeth together. I couldn't stop her. I didn't expect it of her. I had no idea that she was capable of such cruelty. I soon learned that I'd erred in my judgment, however, when she tore her way through the servants who still resided there. She slipped into their quarters quicker and swifter than a cat, and she made short work of them. She murdered all the scullery maids in their beds, and the housekeeper and the footman. By the time I had caught her, it was too late. She had murdered dozens of servants, and she was dripping with gore. There were chunks of flesh beneath her nails and in her hair, and the smell. Magdalena pressed one hand to her mouth. But the worst part about it all was the expression of Crystal's face as she carried out these atrocities. She didn't look aghast at her actions, but she didn't seem particularly euphoric either. Her face was just blank, like a slate, and completely empty. Killing didn't seem to rouse any particularly strong emotions within her, but she killed all the same because it was what her instincts told her to do. Like rabid animals, she knew of nothing save attacking. She bore her fangs and her claws and she killed them. All of them. The servants' quarters looked like a scene from hell itself. And the blood. I'm ashamed to admit that I found the smell quite enticing, but the horror of it all helped me to resist. I was no longer a human, but I still possessed my sense of morals. I didn't want to behave as Crystal was. She was a child and had an excuse, but I was an adult. I knew better. I told myself that I would act better too. I knew I couldn't reintroduce Crystal to polite society, or any society as she was. I was afraid she would harm anybody she came across, so I decided to bind her inside, to her bed, to stop her from causing any further chaos. Then I devoted myself to finding victims for her, so she would not starve. I had hoped animal blood would be enough to satiate her, but she turned her nose up at it. She would only drink the blood of humans, and it had to be fresh. I had no choice but to kill on her behalf, to sustain her, but I tried to do so without drawing too much attention to ourselves. I've been looking after Christelle for the last century. While Christelle slept, I had a lot of free time, and with it I taught myself to read and how to write. I made use of all the books in the library and the von Schlieffens left behind, and with this knowledge I fashioned myself into a lady of sorts. After being a maid for so many years, I think I wanted to act a little more important than I really was. I suppose part of me even believed I deserved to act thus, being a vampire. I was stronger now, after all, than any human could ever dream of being. It was quite a rush, I'll admit, when I slew my first victim for Christelle's sake. It was thrilling, almost, to bring down a grown man with such ease. Part of me took delight in my powers, but another greater part of me grappled with the cruelty of my actions. I tried to target people who deserved it, much like those bandits who pursued you and Henrique, but that hasn't always been possible. I've killed any number of innocents to sustain Christelle. I tried to tell myself I'm not like her. I, at least, am rational. But when I consider all the evil deeds I've committed over the years, I have to wonder, am I really any better than she is? I am a vampire too, when all is said and done. I should have died over a century ago. I can play at being a human well enough, better than many others of my kind, and I do try to remember my manners. The fine clothes I wear are all for show, as is my affected way of talking. Christelle might have been a monster, but she was never trying to pretend to be otherwise. She was too earnest for it. I, meanwhile, gad about as though I am worth more than I am, as though I am a real lady. A lady. Magdalena scoffed, as though it was without any humour. Though her lips were pulled into a grim facsimile of a smile, her eyes were dark and joyless. I could never be a lady like you, Meike. I wasn't born into nobility. I'm just a hapless maid playing pretend. But no, I'm not even that. I'm a monster. A murderer. I've no right to act with all these airs and graces, as though I'm so much better than anybody else. I've no right to be alive at all. Oh, Lena. Oh, Magdalena, your story's so sad. The story's so sad, I'm so sorry. Meike sighed thus, once Magdalena had finished speaking. She looked at her companion with genuine, compassionate eyes, then reached forth. Taking one of Magdalena's gloved hands in her own, she squeezed and said, "You might see yourself as a monster, but I don't. I could never regard you like that." "No?" Magdalena sniffed, her shoulders trembling, though her eyes, as always, remained dry and devoid of tears. "You don't think me wicked after I caused you so much suffering? I kidnapped you, and if Hayden Marie hadn't killed my poor mistress, I'm certain I would have fed you to her in the end, as I have so many others." "Yes, I know. But it's not as though you tricked me. You lent me no illusions that, should I remain in your home, I would not meet my end. You warned me, but still, I persisted in remaining here. You would have let me go, remember, had I not come to Henny's defense?" "Well, of course I remember. It was your self-sacrifice which first made me regard you, not as another morsel for my mistress, but as an equal. I thought the way you treated Henrique was admirable. My own mistress, Christelle's mother that is, never would have been so conscientious. I was never regarded as a friend of the family, I was only ever a servant. In that sense, I suppose I'm somewhat jealous that you and Henny are so close. She is lucky to have a mistress like you. And Christelle was very lucky to have a maid like you. Christelle was very lucky to have a maid like you, who was so unfailingly loyal. You stayed by her while you were alive, and continued to serve her even after the pair of you returned. That is why you performed so many immoral actions. It wasn't for the fun of it, nor the thrill that you hunted down all those who traversed too close to your home. You did it because of your overwhelming loyalty for your mistress. You didn't want to let her die. Is that not right? It is right, yes, but... Oh, Hayden Marie was right to scorn me. Though I had the best of intentions, I was woefully misguided. The young girl I had cared for died a long, long time ago. She looked somewhat akin to my crystal, but it was not her. She was not a human. By prolonging her life in so unnatural a way, I only made her suffer more. If I truly loved her, I never would have chained her up indoors as I did. I should have let her starve. That would have been a real kindness. It's easy to say what you should have done now, but I don't think you would have had it in you, Lena. To kill my mistress? Meike nodded. I know you like to posture yourself as a heartless monster devoid of emotion, but that isn't true. You're far nicer than you appear. You say that you should have let your mistress starve, but I doubt you could have let that happen. You would have felt much too guilty. It wasn't her fault, after all, that she was turned. No, it wasn't. You're quite right about that. Oh, I will say, when you do so much narration, it sucks the oxygen from your brain. No, it wasn't. You're quite right about that. My mistress was innocent, in a sense. She was only a child. I don't think she really knew what I don't think she really knew what it was she was doing. But she was still incredibly dangerous, all the more because she did not understand her own strength. She certainly didn't recognize me after she was turned, though she'd always been fond of me when she had been alive. I would sit with her every day and try to penetrate the fog which shrouded her memories to little avail. If she had known who I was, I like to think that she wouldn't have hurt me. But she still did. I knew she was a monster whose existence would cause others untold harm, yet still, I could not kill her. I pitied her far too much. She was beyond being detestable, but I can't say the same about myself. I still maintained my sense, even after being turned, and I knew that what I was doing was wrong. Oh, thanks for the stretch check. Thank you, thank you. Excuse me. My hands are stained with so much blood. I fear I'll never be able to wash them clean. I'm glad that you still seem to care for me, Meike, but how can you bear to be with me? Don't you think me unforgivably wicked? You might think that you are wicked. You've certainly said so enough times, but I do not. You were put in a difficult place, but I think you did the best you could. Yes, she did! You're not a bad person, Lena. Just an unfortunate one. You never asked to be turned into a vampire, either. I know that, but how am I supposed to live my life now? How can I ever forgive myself? Silence filled the room following Magdalena's exclamation. Her chest rose and fell with sharp, uneven breaths, and her eyelids trembled. Though Magdalena's skin was untouched by age, Meike could see the years of pain and self-reproach written upon her. It pulled in her eyes, which seemed all of a sudden unfathomably deep. They were so full of self-loathing, Meike feared she might drown in them. Meike could see now beyond all of Magdalena's bravado, could see one clear, unmistakable truth. She could see that Magdalena despised herself. No! Magdalena had despised herself for many, many years, ever since she had been turned into a vampire. Magdalena could not love herself, for she had become something she considered evil. But Meike could. She realized, been in love with Magdalena for a long while already. Lena, Meike spoke softly, still squeezing Magdalena's hand. I can't say when, or even if you'll be able to forgive yourself. That isn't something for me to decide. You'll have to think about all you've done on your own, try to come to your own conclusions. Yes, I thought you might say that. It's as I feared. Well, I've had a century to think things through. I already know what I think. I don't think that I can be forgiven. It isn't possible. I've done too many awful things. Hayden Marie should have put me to death 12 times over, and not even that would be enough to cleanse all of my sins. They're too great, and they weigh upon me much too heavily. That might be true for you, and it's true too that I don't know all the pain you've wrought. I know instead only of how you treated me. I know that you did not wish to cause me any undue hurt. Meike leant in, then pressed her other hand to Magdalena's cheek, cupping it gently, her fingers splayed. She then said, "And I know that, even if you can't forgive yourself, I can. I forgive you, not on behalf of your other victims. I'm afraid I don't have that authority, but for all you've ever done for me." Do you really mean that? Meike nodded. I don't hate you, Lena, and I certainly don't think you're a monster. How could I, when I care for you so deeply? You have come to mean a good deal to me during these weeks we've spent together, and if I'm being honest, I don't ever want to be parted from you. Meike. Oh, Meike. Magdalena sniffled, her pale eyelashes trembling. I don't think I deserve your kindness, nor your fondness. But I'm not arrogant enough to assume I could tell you how I feel, though I know I've often acted like it. Your feelings are your own. If you like me as much as you say you do, then I suppose I'll have to accept it. I guess I'm fine with you falling in love with me, I guess. I don't really understand it, but... A small smile caught the corners of Magdalena's lips, thinner than a piece of sewing thread. I like you too, Meike. Oh, Lena. Meike? Meike leant in closer still, the inches of space which parted her and Magdalena diminishing with each millisecond. There came a brief pause of about a second, like the gap between seeing and hearing a bolt of lightning, as both women stared at one another. They swallowed, as though in unison. Then, they shifted. Kiss. It was Meike who moved first, but Magdalena soon followed her lead. Bridging the infinitesimally short space between them, they parted their lips, then pressed their mouths together. It was a very soft, gentle, tender kind of kiss, different from the one they had shared before, after Magdalena had drained Meike of her blood. It was a kiss born not from fear that soon their acquaintance would end, but from hopes, tentative though they were, for the future. The kiss lasted only a few moments, but might have endured for longer had both women not been interrupted by the sound of a startled gasp. Damn it, Henny. Oh my! Meike and Magdalena pulled away, Meike blushing abashedly, to glance over at the doorway. Berserk Boy, I would advise watch the VOD for the previous stream of Cage of Roses. Far too much happened last week to really condense it into, like, a brief amount of sentences. There Henny stood, her eyes wide, frozen like a figure in a photograph. She was almost grave-faced enough for it, her fingers curled around the door handle. Meike had half a mind to try and make excuses, to tell Henny that things were not as they looked, but she hadn't a chance to get out any words. Henny was already beginning to babble. I do beg your pardon, Meike. I didn't mean to walk in on you. If you're otherwise engaged, I can always leave. I'd hate to intrude. I can tell when I'm not wanted. What? No, Henny. Meike frowned, her perplexity overcoming her embarrassment. Of course you're wanted. I'm always happy to see you. You don't need to apologize. Are you sure? It seemed like the pair of you were rather busy. Not that I can blame you for it. You've not had a chance to be alone in quite a while, and I'm sure Magdalena is pleased to see that you've recovered. It's only natural that you would want to celebrate, though I must admit I'm somewhat surprised to discover how close you are. That isn't to say I'm judging you for it, though. I'm happy, in fact. You are? Of course. I think it's a wonderful thing that you care for Magdalena so much. It doesn't matter to me that she's a woman, or even that she's a vampire. Henny Ally! Henny Ally of the Year! God damn it, fuck yes, Henny. You've always been such an individual, Meike. It makes sense that only an unusual person could win your heart. No, not that it's meant to insult you, of course. That's alright. I know that I must seem awfully unusual to the eyes of you humans. I cannot blame you for being surprised at Meike's... How shall we term them? Magdalena smiled, her eyes crinkling. Affections, let's say, towards me. In fact, I'm rather surprised at it myself. I did not think, when I first imprisoned her, we would ever become so close. She is rather unique, though, as far as the young ladies go. Hang on. She's not at all like the prim, prissy young maiden I once believed her to be. Oh, yes, my Meike's always been unique. She used to get into all sorts of scrapes when she was young. Her mother would almost hit the roof, she would, at some of her stunts. I could well imagine. Magdalena tittered, then glancing to Meike, began to toy with a few loose locks of her hair. They love each other so much. Were you a naughty girl, Meike? As a child, maybe. Hen is misrepresenting me, though. I stopped acting half so wayward on my 13th birthday. I thought I ought to start acting more like a young lady. And if I'm being wholly honest, being scolded so incessantly by my mother began to grate on me. I thought my life would be easier if I changed my attitude. But it didn't make me happy. Yes, you had mentioned your mother sounded rather overbearing. She was very overbearing. She decided every aspect of my life, or so it seemed. Sometimes I felt I could not even sneeze without her permission. As is often the way of nobility. I know of it well, having much experience with the elite. I was often punished. It was quite tedious being forever at the beck and call of my so-called superiors. I was at my mother's beck and call too, despite being her daughter. I was supposed to be a lady, but I felt more like a servant. I think I might have even had less freedom than Hen did. My mother decided what I wore and what I ate, when I slept, and as if that weren't enough, she also meant to decide who I would love. My poor mistress. I know you never much cared for Herr Gerhard, and after spending so much time in his venerable company, I can see why. Sorry, that's Maheni speaking, sorry. I know you never much cared for Herr Gerhard, and after spending so much time in his venerable company, I can see why. The man is an ass. Oh, he is, isn't he? All that Latin. Meike pulled a face. He's such a bore. He's so stuck up and self-important, it was enough to turn my stomach. And he was small-minded too, for all his airs and graces. Can you believe, Meike, that he didn't care tuppence about what might have happened to you? I told him you'd been kidnapped, yet he didn't even attempt to try and find you. It was as though, I don't know. As though he'd written you off as bad business venture, like cargo that had fallen from a trading ship during a storm. That is often how I felt around him, yes. I'm not surprised that Herr Gerhard did not rush to my rescue. It would have been much more surprising if he had. Oh, excuse me. Yes, indeed, I have streamed Resident Lover. We did the Lady Demetresque romance, I think. Was it this Valentine's Day? This past Valentine's Day? It might have been. It was either Valentine's Day or last Halloween, one of the two. I would be very happy if I never saw him again. That is something I can concur with, at least. You have no need for a fiancé now. Not when you have me. Oh my. Henny's face, which had begun to cool during her indictment of Walter Gerhard, now began to colour anew. The pair of you certainly are close, aren't you? That kiss ought to have given away, I suppose, but well. This is an awful lot more for me to come to terms with, though I suppose it's nothing so very scandalous, now that I know vampires exist, and miracles. Excuse me. And when I think about all that, I don't suppose I should be too surprising that two women might fall in love, just as a woman and a man might. I'll admit, I've never given it much thought myself, but if you two are happy, who am I to judge? You might have kidnapped my Meike, Magdalena, but you've certainly been more attentive to her needs than her so-called fiancé. At the very least, you seem to care for her. Oh, you needn't worry about that, Enrique. I care for your Meike a good deal. I might have done many wicked things in my life, but I am not devoid of feeling, and neither am I impervious to love. I have been alone for a very long time, but Meike has stolen my heart. Lena. It isn't much of a heart, of course, given it no longer beats. But for what it's worth, my feelings are sincere. I really do love you. And are you, I promise you that. And I'm very glad to hear it. Your relationship might raise a few eyebrows, but I don't much care about that. I'd far rather you be happy, Meike, than correct. What is correct anyway? Why, I'm starting to think all these rules and customs are made up, just to give us little folk, and us larger folk too, more hoops to jump through. Why can't two women be in love if that's how they feel? Correct! Damn right! I, for one, think the world could use more love, not less. Feelings such as this should be celebrated. Henny. Meike smiled, touches at her maid's impassioned words. Thank you for being so understanding. I'm not sure what I would have done if you'd rejected me. As if I would. I hope you weren't worrying about that, Meike. What a waste of time if you were. You should know by now that I'm never one to judge you or desert you. Why, I spent the last few weeks out of my mind with worry, scrambling to save you. Your fiancé, ex-fiancé I should say, threatened to have me thrown in an asylum for worrying about you too much. Oh goodness, he didn't, did he? Yes, he did. Not just once, but twice. He said he was concerned about my safety, but I don't believe a word of it. He just wanted me out of the way. Bah. Henny turned, then spat upon the carpet. Let's not talk about him no more. It's not like we'll be seeing him again. And good riddance, I say. I've had enough Latin to last me a lifetime. Meike began to giggle at this, as did Henny. Magdalena, who had not the pleasure of meeting Walter Gerhard, was less amused, but smiled still to see Meike so happy. Once this moment of merriment passed, Henny folded her arms beneath her bosom and said, Now, it's all well and good saying what we won't do, but I'm starting to wonder about the future. Do either of you have plans? You don't intend to stay in the forest, do you? In this house? Oh, no. I have no fondness for this place. I never liked it much when I worked here as a servant, and I like it less now that I've been incarcerated here for over a century. This place has always felt like a prison, despite being so grandiose. It's much too big for its own good, and almost impossible to clean. It's practically falling apart around my very ears. You're not wrong about that. This place needs a thorough cleaning before it'd even be halfway habitable, and even then, I think it's been left unloved for too long. I doubt it'll ever feel like a real home. Lady von Essen would have been beside herself with this if her house had wound up in such a state. This place, unfortunately, has never felt like a home to me. It isn't where I was born, and it's not where I belong. My own family came from Innigan, which isn't so far away from Augsburg. I would like to see my parents again, or my younger sisters, but they will be long dead by now. There is nothing left for me in this dreary abode. It is half decayed already, and makes me think of nothing but my young mistress's miserable fate. There is nothing for me in Innigan either, though, nor in Augsburg. As a vampire, there is nothing for me anywhere. I have nowhere I can call my home now. But I think I could make a home, maybe, if I could remain with Meike, and perhaps I could even be happy. What do you say? Would you like to live with me, Meike? I, at least, would never make you work on your embroidery, like your mother, and I wouldn't try to marry you off, either. You could read all the books you wanted. I wouldn't chastise you. Oh, yes, I would love that! But where would we go? How would we live? I'm not wholly sure, but I have a few ideas. Deprecated though this abode is, and crumbling with age, its rooms and halls are full of valuables. Lord von Schlieffen was an avid collector of curios from the Middle East, and his rooms are full of trinkets which ought to fetch a good price from interested buyers. I think if we were to sell a lot of these old bits and pieces, we would be able to embark upon a new life together with minimal difficulties. As for where we will go, I am undecided, but perhaps we needn't settle on a location right now. Anything will be fine, I'm sure. If I am with you. Oh, Lena. Meike trembled at both Magdalena's gentle words and at her touch. Her cheeks turned pink, as they so oft did when she and Magdalena were together, and was with a sigh that she said, I want to stay with you too. There's nothing I want more. And me. Sorry, and me. If you need a hand walking your wares, then please make full use of me. My father used to sell his wares all across the country, and I used to help when I was younger. I'd be more than happy to ferry your bits and pieces to Augsburg if you need a pair of extra hands, and when you've gathered enough funds, I'd like to move away with you. I wouldn't get in your way, of course. I'll give you the pair of you some privacy, but I can't bear to be parted from my Meike, not when she's such a good friend to me. Can't we stay together? Oh, of course we can. I don't want to be parted from you either, Hen, unless... Meike paused to look at Magdalena. Would you have an issue with that? With Enrique? Magdalena smiled thinly. I might be a little jealous, maybe. But no, I would not mind it. I would appreciate her help, if she is willing to offer it. Shifting all the valuables from this old pile would be quite a task. I don't know if I'd be up to it on my own. You won't be on your own. I can work as diligently as a car horse, or so I've heard, and I'm no stranger to mental labour. Let's do that then. It sounds like a wonderful plan. If I was on my own, I doubt I'd have much of a future. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. Perhaps I would fall afoul of one of the church's executors on purpose, so that I might be granted some rest. I spent all my afterlife caring for my young mistress. I always feared that, without her, I'd be lost. But now I know that isn't the case. I found an unlikely friend in you, Enrique, and an even more unlikely lover in you, Meike. And who knows? If I stay with you, even a monster like me might be able to be happy. Oh. Is that it? Oh. I think we have an epilogue as well, maybe. But oh, that was so good. Okay, I have thoughts about the story when we get back to the main menu, but oh. They all run away together. That's beautiful. Roxy R, their art was absolutely gorgeous in this game. I need to look them up on Instagram or whatever their main profile is. Because their art was absolutely gorgeous in this game. Hell yes. Oh. This was so good, you guys. Oh, excuse me. They're mainly on Instagram. Let me just, while the credits are rolling, let me just look that up. 1 second. Roxy K. Trying to find them. Oh? Epilogue? Hey, I knew it! Sunflowers in September. Let's go. It was a late evening in Paris, and the sun had already set, the moon round and white in the sky like an egg. Despite the lateness of the hour, however, the streets were still lively. Carriages went up and down the cobbled streets, the horses' hooves striking the ground at irregular intervals, while the vast wheels of these lumbering vehicles rumbled like thunder. It was always busy in Paris, or so Meike had discovered, rain or shine, day or night, especially in the Avenue Montaigne, which is full of expensive shops which catered to the most privileged of customers. Theatergoers and opera enthusiasts strolled past Meike, their fashionable hats and coiffured hair illuminated by the street lamps, while their servants hurried in their wake, carrying boxes and bags in their arms from the day spent shopping. Young girls, meanwhile, some of them not much older than 10 or 11, tried to hawk various goods to those who passed, roasted hazelnuts and wilting daisies picked from the roadside. Most of the passers-by ignored these street sellers, but Meike was less cold-hearted. She paused by one such flower girl, a particularly young thing with dark hair and fair skin, who looked eerily like Magdalena's departed mistress, with a furrow upon her brow. Meike had lived in Paris for well over a year, and she had begun to feel almost at home amongst its streets. The stark disparity between the rich and the poor did weigh upon her, however. Meike could not help but feel for the girl, especially when she herself was wearing such finery. It seemed cruel to simply walk past her. There were simply so many similar children in Paris. Meike knew distributing a handful of coins here and there would have little tangible benefit. She paused for a few moments, perturbed when... Oh! Here you are, young mademoiselle, and do keep the change. It's well deserved, for these flowers are so very beautiful. Magdalena approached the dark-haired girl, handing her several coins from her pocket with a flourish. Oh, her new outfit is so bright and beautiful. It seemed Magdalena shared Meike's sentiments about the poor girl. Had she too seen the resemblance to Crystal in her pale, almost sallow skin and her dark hair? Meike wasn't sure, but Magdalena seemed to be rather enjoying her role as the girl's benefactress. She beamed, now resting a gloved hand upon the girl's head, and said, "In exchange, would you mind giving me your finest bloom for my fair lady? Please, give her something which would set off her lovely red hair and her lovely blue eyes. I want my lady to look her best." "Oh, yes." The young flower girl, who seemed to be about 12 or 13, older than Crystal then, giggled, then reached into the wicker basket which dangled in the crook of her skinny arm. She rooted about inside the basket, shifting her flowers aside, probably ill-gotten blooms snaffled from some noble woman's front garden, before she drew from within its depths. Et voilà! 2 sunflowers, larger than the other blooms in her basket, and quite magnificent, with twin riots of bright yellow petals. These sunflowers were large enough to be ostentatious, but Magdalena didn't seem to mind. Instead, she seemed quite pleased with the flowers that the girls had presented her, beholding them as if they were fine treasures made of solid gold. She beamed, though not too widely. It wouldn't do to startle the girl with her sharp incisors, then said, "Thank you most kindly, mademoiselle. You are too kind. I'm sure my lady will look wonderful with these." "Oh, I'm sure she will. There's no way she wouldn't, kind mademoiselle. Not when she's so pretty. These flowers would suit her to a T, and thanks again. God bless you." "Oh?" Magdalena paused, standing by the roadside, as the flower girl took off, practically beaming from ear to ear. Her sweet, well-meaning appellation, "God bless you," must have struck a chord because Magdalena looked quite bemused. She blinked beneath the rim of her hat, holding the stems of the large sunflowers between her gloved hands. Mutely she looked out at the crowd into which the flower girl had run, her hair shifting in the breeze. Then she frowned. Would God bless me, I wonder? Often I felt as if he had forsaken me, but... Oh, Lady Magdalena! Henny, who had been walking apace with Meike, her hands laden with various boxes from their latest shopping excursions, now paused. "Are you all right? You look very deep in thought there." "What?" Magdalena blinked, like one awakening from a long, long dream, and shook her head. Faintly she smiled, a smile quite unlike any of the smiles Meike had seen from her during their sojourn in the von Schiefer's old, tumble-down manor in the depths of the woods. Then, in a light voice, she said, "Never mind me, Henny. I feel perfectly fine." "Are you sure?" Henny smiled teasingly. Though initially uneasy around Magdalena, she had grown quite comfortable with her during the year they had been together, and she sounded quite cheerful when she said, "If you're not careful, you'll get swept away by the tide and trampled underfoot." "Huh." Magdalena chuckled at this, then shook her head. "I would like to see this crowd try. If they have any sense, they ought to know to keep their distance." True to Magdalena's words, the crowd was giving her something of a berth. Busy though the streets were, the men and the women, their children too, seemed naturally to avoid her, as if they knew no good could come of consorting with such a maiden. Though Magdalena was short of stature and rather skinny, she exuded a sort of aura which seemed to render most people uneasy. Was it her red eyes, perhaps, or her pale skin? Meike was unsure, but it did make shopping easier than it might have been otherwise been, and they were never jostled when they went to the opera either. The flower girl from earlier must have been made of unusually stern stuff, if she had not been perturbed by Magdalena. That, or if she had been that desperate for gold coins, she hadn't much cared about how sinister she was. Well, true enough, we've had not to worry about pickpockets with you around. But you really shouldn't stand about like that. You aren't feeling unwell, are you? I'm quite all right, thank you. I fear this street is too crowded for my liking, however, and it is much too noisy. Let us depart for now. I could use some quiet. Magdalena turned, Meike and Henny following in her footsteps. The trio of women left Avenue Montaigne, which was busy at all hours, and retreated to the riverside, to the quieter part of Paris, where there were fewer opera enthusiasts and self-styled gentlemen. The sounds of the carriages faded away, to be replaced by the running of the water, the discordant quacking of the nearby ducks. It was even darker now than it had been, and the sky was a rich navy blue, a tapestry of stars which fringed the all-seeing moon. The moon's light caught in Magdalena's fair hair, so it seemed to shine like silver, obscured though it was beneath the brim of her hat. Magdalena rarely went outdoors without a hat, though this might have been an unnecessary precaution. She took care never to leave the house when it was too light, when it was too bright. Meike sometimes found it unfortunate she could not promenade with Magdalena during the sunlight hours, but she never once begrudged Magdalena for it. She enjoyed going outdoors with her partner when the sun was beginning to set, when the cool, crisp breeze was full of secrets, and the grass seemed to shiver as it awaited the dawning of a brand new day. Oh. Free from the crowds, Magdalena turned to Meike. Look at them, they're so in love, I love it. Then, very gently, she smiled. She stepped forth, one of the sunflowers in her hand, and threaded it through Meike's copper hair, a delicate gesture which made Meike shiver. Magdalena beheld Meike, her red eyes full of some emotion Meike could not quite place. Affection, she imagined, or perhaps something deeper, as she said, "Now that we are on our own, I feel I ought to relay the young flower girl's message to you. Such kind words are wasted on me, given my true nature. But I hope God blesses you, my Meike. You deserve it." Oh, look at them! Look at my girls! They look so happy. Lena. Meike blinked. A blush rose in her cheeks, pale pink. And it's very kind of you, but I think you deserve a few of those blessings yourself. I wouldn't want to take all of them. Wouldn't that be greedy? Not at all. You can be as greedy as you want with me, Meike. Everything I have, you may take. I do belong to you, after all. Body and soul. This is so gay for each other, I love it. And really, you needn't worry about God blessing me. No? No. After all, I have you. Magdalena's red eyes softened. A gust of wind blew, stirring her hair, the hem of her long coat. The yellow sunflower in Meike's hair was so very striking it might have been garish, especially when contrasted with the shock of vivid red hair. But it was late, and the lights were dim, and the sunflower instead seemed a very soft and lovely thing indeed. That sunflower seemed to carry within it a whole wealth of meaning. It was the sun which Magdalena could not stand beneath, for fear that she would burn to a crisp, that her body could be consigned to ashes. Magdalena could not step out during the day, but she did not need to. Now she had Meike. Meike would continue to shine upon her, to smile at her, and in that sense, perhaps Magdalena was very fortunate indeed. Both women had rescued the other. They had allowed one another to escape, and when Magdalena next spoke, Meike felt her heart flutter. Meike stared at Magdalena, who was so divinely beautiful, she put all the goddesses in the Greek pantheon to shame, as she said, "And when we are together, I feel very, very blessed indeed." Oh. And that's the end! Oh my god, this was so good. This was so cute. Okay. So that epilogue was just the last little cherry on top. Just let our two beautiful girls and Henny, our wonderful maid, be happy and gay in Paris. Perfect. So good. Okay, I'm gonna take some water, then I'm gonna give my thoughts. So, this was a visual novel in the purest sense. It was a straightforward story with no alternating paths. So, a part of me is kind of wondering if there was originally a plan to do multiple endings with you playing specifically as Meike or Henny, depending on which of the stories you were playing or was focusing on when the two women got split. But it feels like this was maybe always intended to be just a straightforward story that was told in a visual novel style manner, rather than having any possible like wrong endings or different paths you could choose. They wanted to tell one story from start to finish, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just want to make that perfectly clear before I get into my feedback about this game. So, this game was lovely. It was a nice story, very direct. I will say there were very few twists and turns that kind of caught me off guard. I could kind of sense where everything was going roughly, but it feels like there was a lot of potential for some more twists and turns to happen in the story, rather than the direction which they took. I think especially with her Gerhard, I was fully expecting, and I don't know whether it was a plot they had in mind, but they ended up scrapping it, but the way that the character designs for all of the maids were all redheads, I was fully expecting some kind of twist with maybe something like he had a specific type, and her Gerhard, rather than just being like an asshole who saw Meike as just an asset to be wedded to, I was fully expecting him to take a much more sinister turn, with Meike getting rescued and then him like trapping her in his house to kind of keep like his like a weird kind of collection of pretty redheads under his rule. Maybe that's just me thinking more like, because I was thinking maybe this would maybe go in a Bluebeard sort of direction, with him maybe having previous wives that all look similar, that he had a very distinct type, and so then Magdalena would have to come in, or like come in and rescue her in some way. And I feel like, okay, I get that they did it's perfectly fine that you didn't want to make Meike a vampire with her sacrificing herself to protect Magdalena. That is completely fine. However, I think what happened to the priest, with him literally having divine powers to save her life, while it was hinted at that he did have some kind of healing ability with him helping the younger maid's father in the past, and I think it was implied that he was a werewolf or something like that, and he healed him of his affliction. Him bringing excuse me, him bringing Meike back to life felt literally too much like a Deus Ex Machina. It felt like it was a little too contrived and a little too out of the blue. It felt like there should have been more struggle, and I don't know, it felt like there's maybe something else. Okay, what are people saying? The developer was very efficient and focused on what they wanted to do, which is completely fair. I played another visual novel by the same person. She tends to not create separate endings from what I've seen. That is also completely fair. If that is like your particular style of story and you just want to tell a story in this gameplay format with the visuals and everything like that, that is 100% fine. I'm just so much more used to playing visual novels where they do have diverging paths, that that's the kind of format of gameplay for visual novels that I'm used to. So playing one that's directly one clear story from start to end, I'm not used to playing those, so that's why it kind of threw me off a little bit. I feel, yeah, the game was pretty good and the artwork was fantastic, but I do agree the plot feels a little tried and done, and there's were a couple of story bits that felt like they were leading to something bigger, but either not leading up to anything or some of the bits kind of whimpering out. I was fully expecting those two to leave and she turns her before she dies. Something like that, because... Oh, sorry. Like, I was so expecting her Gerhard to turn out to be more of an asshole. Like, literally, it was... I think I said at the time, I was fully expecting when Henny was, like, sneaking in and out of the house to go to the church, her catching her Gerhard with one of the maids. And then her being put into a precarious position within the house because now she knows the secret. And then it makes more sense, like, oh, that's why he's not so choked up about Meike not being there. But I'm not sure if there was some plot lines that they ended up scrapping. Yeah, it felt like that just could have been... I felt like the story for this game was like at a 7. Like, it was fine. It was good. The romance was lovely and very sweet, which was really, really nice and tender. I just felt like there was a lot more they could have done. And I'm trying to say this in a constructive way and not in a mean way. I still very much enjoy this game, but it felt like there could have been just a bit more oomph to the story. And I'm not meaning oomph in terms of like make it grimmer, make it more gothic or sexy or anything like that. There's apparently there's a patch you can download for the game, or like a DLC that you can get for the game, which includes an intimate scene with Magdalena and Meike. I didn't install that because I didn't know how risque it would get. I didn't want to get my channel flagged for having not safe for work content. So there is an option to have more sexy times in it, but it feels like there was maybe more exploration they could have done with some of the side characters. I don't know. Also, I think Magdalena's backstory was fine. It was a really good backstory, and it made a lot of sense why she was so committed to helping this young vampire. There was a part of me that was thinking, like, would it have been worse or better if, I don't know, maybe the young vampire... Okay, so hear me out. What if, hypothetically, instead it's revealed that her Gerhard was the vampire that turned Magdalena and her mistress of the castle, Christelle, sorry, and he was planning on doing the same to Meike once she arrived there. And then it's with this revelation that then sparks Magdalena to go and rescue Meike to stop this from happening. Of like, oh no, like I recognize this pattern of behavior, or even something happens where she receives a letter or some indication, something, I don't know, a little bit more of a threat. I don't know. It just feels like this was great. I think this was good, but it could have been great. That's what I'm gonna leave it as that. I still very much enjoyed myself. It was a very sweet romance. It was good, could have been great. I just feel like there could have been a little bit more oomph to it. Like, don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with the art, the music was lovely, it's just the story could have been turned up to from like a 7 to like an 8 or a 9. Like, go hard on the plot points with the different redheads and the priest and whatnot. Yeah, and a part of me wishes like we could have seen what have happened to the priest. I was fully expecting us to see what happened to him and Hayden Marie when they got to Paris or something like that, like passed by him on the street and he's a vampire now or something like that. But maybe they're leaving that open for subsequent stories and they'll show up again in a future game. So that's kind of my general thoughts on the game. Overall, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. I just felt like it could have been a little bit more. Maybe also because I've been writing a book, so I've had more of my writer's brain clicked on at the moment, and I'm much more kind of aware of pacing and words. There's also was some lines that I felt like could have been edited where it felt like, I don't know, maybe another round of edits on the script could have served it better, because it felt like you could have cut down on some of the word economy, but that's me coming from the perspective of someone who's writing a novel, not someone who's developing a visual novel. So that's just my 2 cents on it as well. It had a lot of promise, but kept it just fine. And there's nothing wrong with just fine. This was a perfectly fine game. Just wish it could have been a little bit more, but that's just me. Let's have one last look at the art of this game. Ooh. Addendum. Because we have things here now. We have the gallery and we have the music. What is addendum? Is this the epilogue? Hang on. Wait, do we have a little bit more story? 1 second. Hang on. Because I just stumbled across this. I thought this was like, oh, to play the epilogue again. Hang on. Heidenmarie. Hey, Heidenmarie. Won't you tell us a story? What? Heidenmarie glanced over at Azrael, her arms folded. Azrael was a blonde, curly-haired girl who was very pretty. Already at the age of 14, she was the oldest girl in the orphanage, decidedly too old for bedtime stories. Heidenmarie had half a mind to tell the young girl to zip it. Wasn't she being a bit too demanding? But... Come on, Heidenmarie, please, 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 pretty please. I want to hear it, and I know you want to tell it. I want to hear all about the evil, wicked vampires you've beaten up, and I don't want you to spare any details either. I want to hear all about the blood and guts and gore. I want to know all about your amazing exploits, so I can dream about being an incredible vampire hunter myself one day. We all want to hear it. Isn't that right, Lucille? Juriel? Lucille, a girl 2 years Azrael's junior, with braids and freckles, opened her mouth, but she didn't have a chance to say anything. Azrael cut her off. Azrael had a tendency to do that, smirking smugly all the while. Yeah, that's right. We all want to hear it, see? Won't you tell us a story, Heidenmarie? Please, please, please? Well... Heidenmarie paused by Azrael's bedside, her resolve wavering. She put the children to bed as a favour to Johann. This was typically his job, but she knew he'd been busy lately, and had meant to leave them as quickly as possible. Azrael's hankering for a bedtime story had rather put a spanner in the works, however. Heidenmarie had already made up her mind to leave, and damn what Azrael wanted, when... Miss Heidenmarie? Juriel, the youngest of the bunch, and the sweetest, looked at her askance. Would you stay, please? I also want to hear a story. Heidenmarie's resolve began to waver. She didn't want to spend a whole night indulging in a group of children, but... Oh, very well. I could tell you one story, but that's it. I mean it. There really will only be the one, and it'll be a short story, too. Alright. Azrael whooped, throwing her hands up in the air in celebration. Brightly she beamed, then said, What story will it be this time? Will it about to be your trip to Innsbruck with Father Dovrak? Dovrak. Sorry. I've been on the Julian Dovrak Tumblr tag recently on Tumblr, so I just can't unsee Julian Dovrak. Anyway, with Father Dovrak and the creepy cult that you found there? All the time you travelled to Austria in the winter and you met the vampire noble who lived in that old palace? All the time you infiltrated that boarding school and you threw the headmistress, who was really a wicked vampire in disguise, through a window? What about that trip you took only a few years ago, when you met that young girl at Mount Ohe who turned out to be a demon? Azrael and Lucille bombarded Heidenmarie with suggestions, each more fantastical than the last, when... What about Magdalena? Juriel spoke softly, her voice barely more than a whisper, but Heidenmarie still heard her. As a vampire, her hearing was impeccable, and she could pick up on even the softest of sounds, the padding of a cat's paws or the individual sound of the falling droplets during a rainstorm. Heidenmarie's head swiveled in Juriel's direction, while the young girl shrank back, abashed perhaps at having been singled out. She hunched up on herself, bundled in her plain pajamas, and mumbled, But it's all right. You don't need to tell us that story. The others are more exciting. Oh no? Heidenmarie's expression softened, and she smiled. She was rather fond of Juriel, maybe because the girl was so small and scrawny. She had come to the church after being found on the streets, presumably abandoned by her parents. Though Heidenmarie didn't know the precise details, Juriel had never told anybody about her parents, nor her old home. She hadn't even told anybody her name, not even Johann. Her name was referred by Juriel. Juriel had been given to her, picked out just like Lucille and Azrael's, but at least Heidenmarie knew that what names their parents had given them. Juriel was a blank slate, so to speak. There was a lot about her that Heidenmarie did not know. Her past was shrouded in mystery, and perhaps that was why Heidenmarie preferred her to the others. Like Juriel's, Heidenmarie's own past was a blur. It had been many, many years since she had been a child, and she could no longer remember her own parents, nor the village where she had been born. At least she remembered her name, however. It was this which had allowed her to hold on to her sanity even after being turned, this which made her sense of self unassailable. Heidenmarie did worry about Juriel sometimes, for she had nothing of her past to cling to. But that made Heidenmarie all the more determined to answer her request, no matter how humble it was. Though Azrael and Lucille both preferred violent, gory stories, Juriel was cut from a different cloth. She seemed particularly fond of Magdalena and Meike's story, all the more, Heidenmarie supposed, because it had something akin to a happy ending. In all the centuries Heidenmarie had worked as an executor for the church, she had never quite known a story like it. Sometimes she wondered how Magdalena and Meike were getting on, whether they were still together, just like she and Jeroen. But the fates of those women remained a mystery. Heidenmarie could recall their past very well, however, could still remember Heinriche's anxious face as she had entered the church in Augsburg that night, over 150 years ago, to ask for help. Okay, so we're jumping right to modern day. Interesting. Oh! Heidenmarie smiled as she settled herself down beside Jeroen on her bed, surrounded by young girls, orphans with nowhere to go save the church. Then she retrieved from the bedside table a book, a leather-bound tome Jeroen had penned himself. It was within this book which Jeroen had recorded all of his adventures, those he had undertaken with Heidenmarie. Like John Watson, Jeroen had taken painstaking notes of all the fantastical sights he had witnessed during his unnaturally long life. Within this book, Jeroen had written of his travels to the small, desolate island of Innsbruck, and of the peculiar customs its locals practiced. He had written too of the time Heidenmarie had journeyed to St. Johannes, an all-girls boarding school deep within the Austrian countryside, to dispatch with a particularly pernicious vampire. It was in this book too, spotted with age, a good century or so old, that Jeroen had recorded one of the most memorable nights both of his and Heidenmarie's life. It was in this book that he had written about Meike and Magdalena. Nobody else knew of Meike and Magdalena's tale. Jeroen had not tried to publish any of his tales, and neither had he wanted to. Jeroen had always been a private person, and he had become even more insular since his turning. Though he had no qualms with interacting with others, he certainly was not shy. Jeroen preferred to keep his past to himself, his stories locked up inside his heart. He wrote only that he might remember his own muddled history as time continued to pass him by, the days and months and years slipping through his fingers like sand. Heidenmarie thought it awfully sentimental that Jeroen bothered to write about his past at all, that she felt so compelled to commit it to paper. Why did he care so much? Heidenmarie had been alive for far, far longer than Jeroen, and she had never cared to look back upon her own origins, or upon the early days of her unlife as a vampire. Most of what Heidenmarie could still recall was unpleasant, the first century after her turning at least, when she had been a weak and feeble thing, and she had been bidden to break necks and draw blood with impunity simply to survive. But Jeroen was cut from a different cloth to her. He had always tried to look on the brighter side of life. Perhaps he had wanted to prove to himself that, though a creature which lurked in the shadows himself, the world was not devoid of spots of hope, of light, of life. Perhaps he wanted to remember that he had, indeed, helped people. Jeroen wrote his memories for nobody save himself. It was selfish occupation, in a way, unusually so, coming from a man as selfless as Jeroen, but Heidenmarie supposed everybody had their vices. Even Jeroen had his hobbies. And this fondness for the written word was not completely useless, nor when the children under their watch adored his accounts so. These children, all of them orphans, were the only ones who knew of Jeroen's exploits. To them, Jeroen was a hero, and so, Heidenmarie supposed, was she. It was a strange feeling, being revered by a group of children, but she did not mind it. Perhaps she had grown soft in her old age. She had been alive for so many years, after all. But she would never forget the days she had spent with Jeroen, not when he had written them all down for her. Perhaps Jeroen's writing had not been so very selfish then, after all. He had left a physical record of his exploits for Heidenmarie too. She did wonder about that. Heidenmarie, aren't you going to read? That's right. What happened to Meike and Magdalena? Would you mind telling us? But now was no time for musings. Heidenmarie was not sentimental herself. At least, she didn't want to be. And it was high time she got her act together. Softly, she smiled. She looked down at the book held between her hands, her pale fingers resting upon the pages. She cleared her throat, then she said, "What about Meike and Magdalena indeed? Now, that really is an interesting story. I hope the three of you are paying close attention." Heidenmarie shot at Azrael in particular a stern look. She had an annoying habit of interrupting. "Oh, is that it?" Then, her eyes half-lidded, Heidenmarie began to read. It all began on a dark, sinister night deep in the Bavarian woods. A young woman called Meike was running barefoot through the woods, wearing a torn dress and with a cut upon her pale brow. Her dutiful mate Enrique ran along before her, picking her way through the gloom. Though the fog was thick and both women were exhausted, Meike could hear Enrique's entreaties above the merciless whistling of the wind. "Faster, Meike, faster," the maid cried, her brown eyes wide with fright. "You have to keep moving or else, oh god, they're caning on us." And we got an achievement, A Dark and Sinister Night. It looks like someone is getting ready to tell a story, and that's lovely. We got to see what happened to Jeroen and Hayden. That's beautiful. Oh, okay. Let's look at the other extras that we've unlocked, and all of the gorgeous art again. I think I've got all the achievements now. Notes. Okay, you know what? Why don't I read this author note, because this is from the writer. "Hello everybody, and thank you for reading Cage of Roses. I'm glad that you checked it out, and I hope that you enjoyed it. As per usual, I'll provide a few notes to reward you for finishing this story, which will detail a few of the things which inspired this particular story, though I think it might be somewhat obvious given its general aesthetic, haha. So, I think this is fairly obvious, but the biggest inspiration behind Cage of Roses is Beauty and the Beast, the 1991 Disney musical in particular, but I also borrowed a little from the 1946 black and white cocktail film adaptation for the general vibes, all the flickering candles, the desolation, and the general gloom. Meike, of course, Belle, while Magdalena is the Beast, and Henny is, though this association is a little looser, Belle's father. I was definitely picking up on that. Who tries to aid Belle after she's been kidnapped. Phew, well I've already written a lot, but that's just about wraps up these notes, so I'll see you later. Just kidding, haha. I do have a little more to say about this story than that, I promise. It might interest you to know, but I first hit upon the idea which later became Cage of Roses all the way back in 2013-2014. Wow, time really flies. I initially devised Cage of Roses as a piece of fanfiction, actually, for the Vocaloid fandom, haha, surprise. The idea first came to me when I listened to the Kaito song Ashes to Ashes by Nobushi. I was especially inspired by the PV which was made for Project Diva Future Tone, and my edgy teen self really wanted to write a boys love Vocaloid fic with a vampire vibe. I didn't want to cast Kaito as a vampire though, but Len. The base idea behind Cage of Roses was there from the start, and a young noble is lost in the woods and they get taken in by a seemingly vicious vampire who, despite being physically stronger than them, is actually shorter than the person they're holding captive. This is why Magdalena is shorter than Meike, by the by. The contrast between being a powerful vampire while also being short and dainty looking is a holdover from this originally being a lighter Len fic. Oh my god. And while I wanted my vampire to appear cold, aloof, and a little unnerving, I wanted the grand reveal at the end to be this vampire never wanted to hurt humans, but was simply trying to help another enfeebled vampire that they were very close to as a human. Since I already said this story was first conceived as a Vocaloid fanfic, and the vampire was Len, it should be fairly obvious who this enfeebled vampire was. Spoilers, it was Rin. I actually did write a little bit of this fic a long time ago, but I didn't get too far. I had the base idea for the story, but no real meat to get from the beginning to the end, and I wasn't really sure how to bridge the introduction. Character is abducted by a vampire, to the ending. Character discovers the vampire was acting to help somebody else, and they were never killing humans solely for sport. By this point, I already lost interest in writing fanfiction anyway, so I decided to shelve the idea with the hope I could reuse it for an original story. Big fucking mood! Big fucking mood as a writer. There are several pieces of fanfiction that I've written for my own enjoyment, just to keep that spark of writing prose and actually structured stories alive, that I don't think have evolved into full stories, but my current project, not the current book I'm writing, but something else I was working on, was kind of inspired by a concept that I had for a fanfic. But I won't go into that until eventually I get around to working on that story. I kept this idea close to my heart, and even when I started working on VNs like The Way We All Go and Blackberry Honey, I kept thinking, what if I did something with that vampire story though? I still like the general idea, and I love crumbling gothic houses in the woods. It would be a lot of fun to revive it. I turned this idea in my head, and I made a couple other attempts to turn it into an original story. I had another crack at turning it into a boys' love story, stripping away the Vocaloid inspirations, and I also tried to retool it into a Yuri story without much luck. I still wasn't sure how to bridge the beginning and the end, and how to craft a proper narrative out of it. Until my maid finished Save the Day, joking but not really. Wow. It was a couple of years after I'd written Blackberry Honey, which had been decently successful, that a thought suddenly came to me. What if I took my vampire idea, but I gave the noble woman at the start of the story a maid? This might seem like a simple change, but it actually altered the whole trajectory of the story. If the noble woman had a loyal maid, then I could send the maid out on a story of her own to try and rescue her mistress. The maid could have a more active role in the story, looking around the nearby city to try to enlist somebody to help her storm the vampire's castle and save her mistress, while the noble woman would remain a prisoner, trapped in the vampire's home. This gave the story the meat I wanted for so many years, and let me bridge the introduction and the ending together. Finally, there was a B-plot, and it would give me something to write about beyond the noblewoman languishing in her bedroom and regularly having her blood stolen. This story was saved! So yes, I'm very glad I hit upon this idea. If I hadn't created Henny, the story never would have come into fruition in my mind, and I never would have been able to make anything of this once was Vocaloid fanfic idea, which was left to languish for so very long. I'm very grateful to Henny for being the catalyst which spurred me into writing this story almost 7 years after its inception, and I'm very glad I was able to bring this vision I had to life. I think the characters are a little coloured by their fanficky origins, Magdalena in particular. I mean, she even has Len in her name, Lamau. Honestly, these notes are fantastic. I'm living for this. But I hope the story was enjoyable regardless. As for Johan and Hayden Marie, they're actually stowaways from another story of mine I wrote back in 2019, haha. Johan was originally conceived as a love interest in a Lovecraft-inspired visual novel. Can you make this, please? I would like to kiss the pretty priest. Can I kiss the hot priest? I'm just saying, it's open for, like, more stories with Johan. Please? Please, stories with Johan. Johan was originally conceived as a love interest for a Lovecraft-inspired visual novel as the young priest on the island who despairs that his congregation have all started to turn towards worshipping strange fish people rather than the Lord. Mood. Hayden Marie, meanwhile, was his vampiric assistant, who was sent to protect Johan, but also patrol the island to deal with any threats, such as elder gods. I never did anything with this story, even though I did write the majority of it, because the script turned out to be terrifyingly long. It's over 400,000 words. Good God. And I feared I would go insane if I had to edit and code that behemoth on my own, and it would probably be too expensive to produce in any event, since there are a lot of characters. I liked Johan and Hayden Marie enough to rescue them from that story and give them a new lease on life, though. I also like to think this unreleased Ebby visual novel is still canon to my overall Ebbyverse, and these events in it did occur, even if the story as of writing hasn't been released, since Johan and Hayden Marie do reference this story a couple of times in Cage of Roses. The events in Cage of Roses takes place a couple of years after they went on their journey to Innsbruck. It's supposed to be It's supposed to be like Innsmouth, I get it. After they went on their journey to Innsbruck and faced off against an island full of cultists in a story I wrote but never released, haha. Incidentally, the hero of the unreleased Ebby visual novel where Johan and Hayden Marie came from, Howard, gets mentioned in one of my other Yuri visual novels, Bittersweet Blossoms. Howard is Patience's father, and Fran, Patience's mother, was one of the love interests from the unreleased Lovecraft visual novel. Since Bittersweet Blossoms is a sequel to Blackberry Honey, I guess that means Blackberry Honey and Cage of Roses technically take place in the same universe, and vampires canonically exist in the world of Blackberry Honey, haha. Anyway, I think that concludes all of my notes for Cage of Roses. The development for the story has a lot of twists and turns, and there's even more I could say. For instance, this was a story I initially pitched to Studio Elan when they asked if I would write a script for them, but it was rejected for being too dark as they got Our Home, My Keeper instead. But I've talked enough already, so I'll cut it short here. Thank you very much for checking out the story. I really do appreciate it, Ebby. Ebby, you did such a great job with this. This was an absolute delight. I don't know if you're ever going to watch this, but great story. Thank you so much for this wonderful adventure. Okay, any other things? I think just the gallery of pretty pictures. Okay, let's watch the video again right at the end. And, ooh. God, the art in this game is just so good. Just so atmospheric, so pretty. This one of... God, this one of Meike is just so gorgeous. Like, the coloring of the satin. Like, painting fabric is hard fucking work. And you made that look like the most luxurious satin in the world. And, like, the night dress and everything, just, so good. Also, the two wives, I love them. So gay for them. I'm looking so respectfully. God, they're so pretty. They're so pretty. They're so pretty. Oh my god, it's so good. Oh my god, this game. This one is also fantastic. Actually, hang on. Taking that as a screenshot. Love that one. Also, this one with the two of them, I am also taking as a screenshot. God, the colors and the cape with the moth's wing, just, it's all so beautiful. Kiss. So soft, so gay. And this beautiful reunion, this was wonderful as well. Oh. And of course, the death of Magdalena's poor mistress. Oh, that poor girl. And this devastating moment, but the composition and the lighting is so good. It's so good. It's a brutal moment, but it's so beautifully... the lighting! Also, this one with Jeroen as well. I wish we got more art of Jeroen. Jeroen's hot. Is really, really good with it looking like the composition looking like a biblical piece. Oh my god. This game is so pretty, you guys. And then, of course, our lovely ladies ending up in Paris. Being beautiful and gay in Paris. I want to watch season 2 of Interview with the Vampire again. For no reason in particular. Oh. And the extra art. So pretty. And, of course, the ultimate fate of Hayden and Marie. So happy we got to see what happened to her. Okay, so... Again, we're having a slightly shorter stream tonight, but honestly, I think that worked out nicely. We're roughly like 2 hours or so, and we managed to enjoy not just the end of the story, but the epilogue, and we got to see like the little addendum at the end of it as well, which was lovely. But thank you so much for joining me tonight, my lovelies. I hope you all had a wonderful time here at the Blue Rose Respite. I'm gonna have a think about what I want to play for next Friday. Because yeah, I don't think there's anything that should change with my schedule for the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I'll have a look around what I've currently got on my list of games for potential options. Also, was there still interest in me trying to do an honor run of Baldur's Gate 3? Because I want to give it a try. I'm determined to try to get all of the achievements for Baldur's Gate 3. Do you want me to try to do an honor run of Baldur's Gate 3? Steph, you should play this game called Paradigm Next. I think you absolutely love it. I'll have a look at it. Is that the one? It might be the one you recommended in the Discord recently. That sounds familiar. Okay, that is an overwhelming yes. Like, please, we want to see more Baldur's Gate 3. Hell yes. Okay, I will keep that in mind. The only caveat I will say is I might not... I'll have to think about it if I want to do like a good dirge run or a dark dirge run. Like, no, definitely not a dark dirge run. I already did that with Rosamund. But if I want to do a dark urge background or if I want to just play as a normal Tav. Because I'm wondering if there's certain things that increase difficulty if you do take the dark urge background. That's my only concern. Like, I don't want to unintentionally make the honor run harder for myself by picking a difficult background. I will have a think. because I'm going to try my best. I want to genuinely try my best at doing an honor run of Baldur's Gate 3. But if I'm unsuccessful at my run of Baldur's Gate 3 as on honor run, if I'm unsuccessful, then I'm going to say, like, I tried my best, but any future attempts are going to be off camera, because then I can just, like, play at my own pace and not have to worry about chat or anything like that. I think the judge's background might make things harder to BH. That's what I was thinking as well. Like, as much as I want to do a good Dirge run on stream, if I want to try and do an honor run and that be the main thing we're working towards, that's where I want to prioritize. But that is for future stuff to worry about. For now, I'm Sleepy Steph. So let's wrap things up. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, my lovelies. I hope you all enjoyed the conclusion of Cage of Roses. I hope you all had a fun time here at the Blue Rose Respite. Don't forget to join me on Monday for more Date Everything, and Wednesday for more Vampire Therapist Couples Therapy, and of course tomorrow night for the premiere of Chapter 9 of The Fall of Umbramorn, which is a chapter that I'm very, very proud of. I did a lot of work on the sound mixing. I'm very happy with how it's come out, so I highly encourage all of you to please check it out if you haven't done so already. Check out my ASMR tales and give those some love. And if you've been lurking in the shadows and you like what you've seen so far, then please consider following. We would love to have you back at the Blue Rose Respite. You're welcome anytime. Be sure to check out my other socials that are popping up in the chat right now, including my 2 YouTube channels, one for my ASMR tales and the other for my Twitch VODs, and my Blue Sky, my Insta, and my TikTok. I have an ongoing 24/7 broadcast over on my main YouTube channel, which is a collection of ASMR tales and creepypasta narrations, so be sure to check that out and give it some love. Let's see who's currently live. Sean's streaming. Sean's streaming and they're playing. Thank goodness you're here. Sean, it's cool. He's the voice of Scratch. And we got to hang out at Develop Expo last week. And he's really cool and really fun. So I'm going to send you guys over to Sean because he's really cool and really fun. But thank you so much for joining me tonight, my lovelies. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful restful weekend. If you're in a hot place in the world, be sure to stay nice and cool, stay hydrated. Go for a walk outside if you've got sunscreen on and you're staying safe. But until then, I'm going to send you guys over to Sean to have some fun. But thank you so much for joining me tonight, my lovelies. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And as always, stay wicked and wonderful. Good night, my lovelies.